There is a kind of conversation that begins in a low tone, almost like a whisper among the more attentive supporters, and gradually gains strength until it dominates debates, social media, and sports programs. It is that feeling that something important is being decided away from the spotlight, while the club carries on with its routine as normal. At St. James Park, this atmosphere has returned in recent days, fueling expectations, doubts, and a certain silent anxiety that only those who follow Newcastle United closely can fully understand. When this type of mood sets in, every detail starts to be examined under a magnifying glass. An underwhelming performance, a cautious comment, a rumor that appears out of nowhere. Everything becomes a warning sign. Supporters begin to connect the dots, even without having all the pieces of the puzzle. It is in this scenario that difficult questions arise, especially when they involve important players, those who symbolize projects, investments, and the club's recent dreams. Over the past few weeks, the word future has appeared more frequently in conversations about Newcastle. The future of the squad, the future of sporting ambitions, and, above all, the future of names who arrived with high status and great expectations. These discussions do not always come with concrete information, but the mere fact that they exist is enough to create unease among supporters. In moments like these, it is essential to separate external noise from what is really happening inside the club. Rumors spread quickly, especially during the transfer window, but not all of them have a solid foundation. Some stories are born more out of the fear of losing than out of real facts. That is precisely why analyzing reliable sources becomes crucial to understanding what is truly at stake at this moment. This is where the situation begins to take on clearer contours. The name at the center of all this discussion is Sandro Tonali. The Italian midfielder who arrived at Newcastle United amid huge expectations has become the subject of rumors involving a possible departure, especially with speculation linking his future to clubs in Italy. The main topic is revealed at this point because understanding Tonali is understanding an important part of the club's present and its planning. The supporters' concern did not come from nowhere. Tonali has shown, at his best, a level of football considered world-class. He played an important role in recent successes and helped raise Newcastle's competitive level. For that reason, any news suggesting the possibility of his departure naturally generates apprehension. Still, it is necessary to look beyond the headlines and assess the full context. According to Chris Waugh, a journalist from The Athletic, concerns about a possible short-term exit for Tonali are smaller than many imagine. In a recent question-and-answer session published by the outlet, Waugh stated that, internally, there are few indications that Newcastle are close to selling the player, despite the volume of rumors circulating in the market. Waugh acknowledges that his view may even go against the flow of part of the media and the fanbase, but he supports his analysis with concrete factors. He highlights that he understands the fears of supporters, especially because Tonali, when fully fit, makes a real difference on the pitch. Even so, the journalist makes it clear that, at present, he does not see strong signs of an imminent deal. One point frequently mentioned in the speculation is the interest of Italian clubs, with Juventus being cited more often. Tonali's emotional connection with Italian football naturally fuels this type of rumor. However, interest does not mean feasibility, and that is exactly where the obstacles arise that make any deal extremely difficult to complete. According to Waugh, economic factors are decisive in this equation. The investment required to take Tonali from Newcastle would be very high for most Italian clubs, especially in a January window. Even looking at the medium term, such as the next European summer, the financial situation remains a significant barrier to any negotiation of this scale. The player's contractual situation weighs even more against a possible departure. Sandro Tonali is tied to Newcastle United until 2029, with an option to extend. This puts the club in an extremely comfortable position in any negotiations. To even consider a sale, the directors would demand a figure well above what was originally paid for his transfer. This detail practically limits the number of clubs capable of entering a real bidding war for the player. According to the analysis published by The Athletic, only teams from the European elite, particularly in the Premier League, would have the financial capacity to move forward with a proposal of this level. So far, none of these clubs have signaled any concrete move in that direction. Chris Waugh was clear in stating that he would only truly start to worry if formal interest emerged from a major English club or another European giant with proven financial power. Up to now, that has not happened. And while that scenario does not change, Newcastle remain in full control of the situation. Another relevant factor mentioned by the journalist involves Tonali's recent off-field history. The suspension that kept him away from the pitch for a long period due to issues related to betting still weighs on the assessment of potential buyers. Any interested club would need to take this history into account before investing such a large sum. Waugh points out that Tonali served around 10 months of suspension, which inevitably impacts the perception of risk surrounding the player. This does not erase his technical quality, but it adds an extra layer of caution for executives at other clubs, especially in a market that is increasingly attentive to off-field aspects. For Newcastle United, this combination of factors ends up working almost like natural protection. A long contract, high market value, an unfavorable financial context for potential buyers, and the absence of concrete offers create a scenario that significantly reduces the chances of a sudden exit. At least in the short term, the trend is towards stability. For supporters, understanding these behind-the-scenes elements helps to ease some of the anxiety. Instead of reacting solely to rumors, looking at data, contracts, and analysis from reliable sources offers a more balanced view of what could really happen. That is why following in-depth content makes a difference, and if you value this type of analysis, it is worth considering subscribing to the channel so you do not miss any important updates. Tonali's on-pitch moment also influences the narrative. Although some recent performances have not reached the expected level, the club understands the context of adaptation, return after suspension, and tactical adjustments. These factors are part of a broader process, which is not usually interrupted hastily by market decisions. Internally, Newcastle remain focused on consolidating their sporting project. Strategic sales only happen when they make financial and sporting sense, and there are no indications that this is the case right now. Tonali continues to be seen as a valuable asset, both for what he has already delivered and for the potential he can still show. The transfer window, however, always brings surprises. Even scenarios considered unlikely can change quickly if out-of-the-ordinary offers appear. Even so, at this moment, everything suggests that the noise around Tonali's name is more connected to speculation than to real movements. Behind the scenes at the club, this is where the role of quality information becomes even more important. Amid so many versions and rumors, knowing where each piece of news comes from helps to form a more informed view. Chris Waugh's analysis for The Athletic offers exactly that, a grounded perspective. Far from the sensationalism typical of transfer windows,